So recently I asked our followers what are some study-related questions that they would like to get answered. And I asked it through our Telegram channel, I collected the responses, and these are the most frequently asked questions. So I'll be answering them in this video, and some of them I bet will be the study advice that you need to hear to ace bio in 2024. Okay, question. I get turned off when studying bio. What do I do? So in order to solve this problem, I had to ask them why do they feel turned off in the first place. Here are the 4 things that I keep hearing, so see what you can find in common. Number 1, getting so many questions wrong and realizing that I'm not going to get it anyway. Number 2, when answering a question, I think I'm right, but I actually got most of the parts wrong and I'm confused because my answer is related to the question. Number 3, fear of not understanding content. It gets draining to figure it out. And number 4, fear of failure to memorize tons of content. Okay, so what do you notice in common? It's all about hopelessness. Because when you don't know how to study that thing effectively, it feels difficult and you fear that you will not be good at it. Plus, you don't see any way that your situation is going to improve. And so that's what leads to a feeling of hopelessness, and that's why you don't want to study bio. Okay, but the good news is there is hope. Okay, this is why I make all these videos, is to help you make this subject easy. So please subscribe and watch our past videos, there's tons of useful stuff. Next, I think the biggest help will be to download our free Pure Bio notes. So lots of people have improved their grades tremendously even without joining my tuition class, just by studying the notes. So if you haven't got that yet, then your first priority is to download them. And finally, if you found my notes really useful and you want to take it a step further, then you might want to consider joining my tuition class. Question: after school, I'm really tired, especially if there was CCA, and I don't have the energy to study. Okay, so what makes you physically tired? Maybe number 1, it was due to your CCA is physically intensive, or number 2 could be that you are sleep deprived, because 85% plus of students your age are sleep deprived. So high chance, this is the reason. For either scenario, this is what I would do. I would finish my most urgent homework, and then I would have some me time to myself, and then I would sleep early. The reason for the me time is because I know that if we don't do it, it will come and bite us back at our bedtime, and we'll like scroll our phone and watch stuff that will eat into our sleep time. Now, what if you feel like doing nothing at all? You're that tired. Okay, then just make this deal with me. Do one piece of homework, just one. Do the piece that is the easiest or the one that you like the most. And if you were to do more than one, that's all bonus. You only need to do one. And actually, secret, chances are, when you start on the first one, most of the time, you will start doing a bit more than that. And that's how to get more than what you expected. And yes, by the way, it is fine to do less work in order to sleep more. Working more when you're sleep deprived is like going on a really long road trip when you didn't refuel your car. So it makes no sense, right? Prioritize your sleep, or else you will never be able to truly live because you'll always be half exhausted. Question: I can't seem to elaborate my answers well, even though I know the content. So I have 3 steps to help you with elaboration. Step number 1, imagine that every time you write an answer, you're writing to a primary school kid. And so the primary school kid will always ask you, why is this like that? So every step of your answer, ask yourself why, and if you answer it, you will be elaborating. Example, some people write, sweat more cools down the body. Okay, but then the primary school kid will be like, why? So you will answer sweat more means more water in sweat will evaporate. And then the kid is like, why? So when more water evaporates, more latent heat is lost, and that cools down the body. Step number 2 is to be more specific. Example, instead of respiration, write aerobic respiration. So the more specific you are, the more keywords you will naturally hit. Step number 3 is to study my commonly asked questions and their model answers. And once you're familiar with them, you can easily copy and paste those templates into your homework questions and your exams. Okay, and in this section, I'm going to move on to exam-related advice. Question: how should we manage our time during the exam? How should we divide our time properly for each section of the paper? So there's no point fretting over how should I divide each section of the paper perfectly, because they're bound to have some questions where you can do faster and some where you need to think for longer. In fact, if you keep looking up at the clock and checking, that wastes even more time. So just follow this general guideline. For paper 1, you have 40 questions and 1 hour. So if you divide by the time, you have 1.5 minutes per question. So after 15 minutes has passed, I expect to see that I have done 10 questions or more. For paper 2, you have 80 marks and you are given 1 hour 45 minutes. So if you divide the time, that's 1.3 minutes per mark. So after 13 minutes has passed, I expect to have done 10 marks worth of questions or more. Now for myself, I like to give myself a challenge and hit 1 minute per mark to force a sense of urgency. Question: when running out of time in an exam, how do you identify which questions are the priority to do? So I've come up with a simple equation to find out whether a question is high priority. It's marks allocated minus time taken to do the question. So find those questions with high marks like 4 marks, 5 marks, 6 marks, because there's a lot to gain from them if you do it. But at the same time, you need to see if the question can be done quickly. So if it's a graph question, it probably needs super long to do, not worth. If it's those labeling kind of question, label the parts or just state what are the functions of those parts, usually you can do them in like 15 seconds each mark, which is super fast. I actually made another YouTube video where I explain this more, so go check that out about why people run out of time in exams. Okay, and here's a question you've all been waiting for. How do I study one day before the exam? What's the best way to study last minute? So you should not be in this situation, but if you have no choice, then this is what to do. Step 1, look through each topic's mind maps. So I've just updated them for 2024 syllabus, and you can get them if you join our Telegram channel, link in bio. So these mind maps give you an overview of each topic. Now step 2 is you look at all the concepts that are presented in the mind map, and you would realize that, oh, some of them you need to revise, you completely forgotten about them. Maybe transport in humans, oh, there's this concept of blood clotting, I need to revise that. So you just list these down, all the concepts that you need to revise. Step 3, you go through our topical notes and you revise just those concepts which you wrote down. Now optional step 4, if you have time, you can make notes really quickly on all these concepts which you need. So I've just made a video on the most efficient way to make notes. If you are studying like one day before the exam, I think you might still have time to do that. So go check out that video. So at this point, we've already speed revised through all the content that is most important for you right now. Now step 5 is I would look through the commonly asked questions, again in our free Pure Bio notes, for every topic. And I would cover the answer key with my hand and I would read the question and say out what I will answer. Then I will remove my hand and check and give myself feedback. And that's how I learn really quickly what are the model answers. And optional, step 6, if you still have the time, then you can attempt new questions. So I would do practice papers. I wouldn't write out the answers because writing takes a lot of time. I would just say out the answer and then I would flip to the answer key and check. I wouldn't do all the questions in the practice paper also. I would just do the hard ones that I know I need to practice. So now you know the best way to last minute study, but hopefully you never need to get into this horrible situation. And finally, here's a bonus section. This wasn't a question, but I saw students talking about these things and I want to address them. So this is what not to do the day before an exam. I've heard that some people will read through their school notes, but I don't recommend this at all because school notes are super long, have a lot of extra information, and will waste a lot of your time. Instead, you should be reading our free notes because I've removed all the extra information. Another thing I've heard people do is that they call their friends and they test each other on the day before the exam. Now, I've done this myself before, and I've decided that it's not as effective as self-studying and self-testing because you know your weaknesses the best. Your friend can only guess. So you can self-test most efficiently on what you actually need to be tested on, whereas your friend might accidentally test you on things that are not high priority. And it saves a lot of time when you do it yourself compared to calling people, and then there's a risk of wasting time on the phone as well. I think what you want when you do that is you want to be held accountable by your friend and you want to be motivated that you're not doing this alone. You can still do this simply by checking with each other every hour of what you have revised in the past hour. So you just give like a summary report of the things you did, and then there'll be this friendly competition where you try and compete to see who can revise more. That way you get the best of both worlds. Not only are you motivated, held accountable, but also you're efficient. So I hope you like those tips, and the whole reason I make all these videos, right, is to help O-level bio students. So if that's you, then please subscribe because it will make your life easier. And also, sneak peek, I'm going to have a podcast episode with one of my ex-students who will be giving her lessons that she's learned, answering some of these study advice questions as well. So stay tuned, there's lots of great tips to be learned from that, and subscribe so you won't miss out on it.